The most dangerous sound in the Ice Age was not the roar of a lion. It was a baby crying. Because that cry meant one thing. There was a small human nearby who could not run, hide, fight, or keep itself warm. A newborn human weighs around 7 pounds, about 3 kilograms. It arrives soft, loud, helpless, and completely dependent on other people. And yet, every person alive today is proof that this fragile creature somehow survived. I think that is one of the most underrated miracles in human history. Not fire, not stone tools, not cave paintings. The real miracle may be that our ancestors kept babies alive long enough for there to be more ancestors. For roughly 300,000 years, Homo sapiens faced cold nights, failed hunts, hunger, predators, and accidents that could end a life in seconds. And in the middle of all that, they were carrying the weakest mammal on the landscape. So the question is not simply, how did ancient people raise children? The deeper question is, how did a species with babies this helpless avoid disappearing? At first, human birth looks like bad engineering. A baby horse can stand within hours. A baby giraffe drops almost 6 feet, then struggles up and follows its mother. Even a newborn chimpanzee can cling soon after birth. But a human baby? A human baby is born unfinished. Scientists sometimes describe human infants as secondarily altricial. In plain English, that means we are born earlier in our development than expected for a primate of our size and intelligence. And the reason is the human brain. Our brains became enormous, powerful, flexible, hungry organs. But there was a problem. A fully developed human brain inside a fully developed newborn skull would be too large to pass safely through the birth canal. Evolution had to make a trade. So instead of waiting until the baby was ready, human evolution pushed birth earlier. At birth, a human baby's brain is about 25% of its adult size. A chimpanzee baby is closer to 45%. That gap matters. It means a huge part of human brain growth happens outside the womb, in the arms of other people, while the infant is exposed to cold, hunger, germs, and danger. I find this fascinating because it changes the story of human success. We often imagine human evolution as bigger brains, sharper tools, better hunters, and stronger tribes. But maybe one of the greatest pressures on our species was not how to kill a mammoth. It was how to keep a baby breathing through the night. This is where survival of the fittest becomes misleading. The fittest human was not always the strongest individual. Sometimes, the fittest human was the one born into the strongest web of care. Because a human infant cannot survive alone, not for a day, probably not for a few hours. Human childhood is so long and needy that no single adult could carry the burden forever. That means the secret of ancient child survival was never just motherhood. It was a system, and like every system, it had parts. The first part was simple. The baby was never meant to belong to one exhausted adult. In many hunter-gatherer societies, childcare was shared across the group. Anthropologists call this alloparenting, which basically means that people other than the mother help raise the child. Grandmothers, older siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, fathers, and even unrelated adults could all become part of the baby's safety net. And I think this is where modern people often misunderstand the ancient world. We picture prehistoric life as brutal, selfish, every person fighting for themselves. But human babies make that almost impossible. A selfish tribe can hunt for a while. It can fight for a while. But it cannot keep helpless children alive for generations. A baby forced humans to cooperate. That may sound strange, but it is one of the most powerful ideas in human evolution. Our children were not just born into families, they were born into networks. One of the clearest examples is the grandmother hypothesis. Human females often live decades after their reproductive years, which is unusual in the animal kingdom. One explanation is that grandmothers became so valuable to child survival that evolution favored longer lives after menopause. An experienced grandmother knew where food grew, when plants were safe, how to calm a crying baby, and how to keep a toddler away from fire, snakes, cliffs, and water. In other words, she was not extra help. She was survival infrastructure. And it was not only grandmothers. In groups like the AKA of Central Africa, researchers have reported that fathers stay within arm's reach of infants for a remarkable amount of time, around 47% in some observations. That number matters because it breaks the lazy myth that ancient fatherhood was only hunting, fighting, and disappearing into the trees. No. A human father could also be a carrier, a warmer, a protector, a second nervous system. Then there was breastfeeding. In many traditional societies, breastfeeding could last 2 to 4 years, sometimes longer. That may sound unusual to modern ears, but from an evolutionary point of view, it makes sense. Human milk was not just food. It was hydration, immunity, comfort, temperature control, and emotional regulation. Frequent nursing also helped space births, often by several years, which gave one child a better chance to survive before the next arrived. And when one mother could not nurse, another woman sometimes could. Wet nursing, or feeding another person's baby, turns milk into something bigger than biology. It becomes a shared resource. A child without enough milk was not automatically abandoned to chance. The group could step in. The same logic applied to carrying. A crying baby left on the ground was not just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. So ancient babies were likely held, wrapped, and carried for much of the day. Against a chest, beside a heartbeat, near warmth, near milk, near breath. I find this deeply revealing. Ancient childcare was not built around independence. It was built around contact. And contact did not stop when the sun went down. For most of human history, infants did not sleep alone in a separate room, behind a closed door, watched by a device. They slept close to a warm body. They heard breathing, they felt movement, they nursed through the night. Their bodies borrowed regulation from bigger bodies. That does not mean every ancient practice should be copied today. Modern beds, soft pillows, alcohol, exhaustion, and unsafe sleep surfaces can create real risks, but the larger point is hard to ignore. Human babies evolved expecting nearness, not isolation. Then came food. Before blenders, baby pouches, and little jars of carrots, there was a much older method. Adults chewed food first, softened it, and passed it to the child. To modern ears, that sounds almost disgusting. But to a hungry infant in a world without baby food, it was technology. Simple, messy, biological technology. Bone marrow, mashed plants, eggs, fish, meat, whatever the group could safely prepare, the child was slowly introduced to the diet of the tribe. And in that small act, you can see the larger pattern again. The baby survived because adult bodies acted as filters. They warmed the baby, carried the baby, fed the baby, watched the baby, slept beside the baby, and when the baby cried, the sound did not belong to one person alone. It belonged to the group. But we also have to be honest. Ancient childhood was not romantic. It was dangerous. For much of human history, child mortality was brutally high. Estimates for Paleolithic and early farming communities often suggest that around 30% to 50% of children died before age 5. Not because parents did not care, because they had no antibiotics, no vaccines, no clean water, no germ theory, no emergency rooms. Modern medicine changed that story. Since 1800, global child mortality has fallen by more than 90%. That is one of the greatest victories our species has ever achieved. So the lesson is not go back. I would never say that. The lesson is more uncomfortable. We solved many biological threats, but recreated a social one: isolation. Today, many parents are raising children far from grandparents, cousins, and neighbors they trust. Two adults, sometimes one adult, are expected to do the work that once belonged to an entire network. Then we act surprised when parents burn out, babies struggle to sleep, and families feel like they are failing. Maybe they are not failing. Maybe the design is failing them. That is the real ancient lesson. A child is not supposed to be a private project. A child is a community responsibility. So if this story made you think differently, do not let it disappear after the video ends. Share it with a parent who feels alone. Send it to someone who thinks asking for help is weakness. And if you believe we need to rebuild the village, subscribe, stay here, and keep learning with me. Because the future of childhood may not depend only on better technology. It may depend on whether we remember how to hold each other again.